There is a man who, for all eternity, is bound to a relentless task. Sisyphus, once the cunning king of Ephyra, is condemned to push a massive boulder up a steep hill, only to have it roll back down each time he nears the top. His punishment, decreed by the gods, is a testament to the futility of his defiance and the inescapable power of divine retribution. Before his infamous punishment, Sisyphus was already known for his numerous acts of deceit and betrayal. He was the founder of Ephyra, later known as Corinth, and infamous for killing travelers and guests, violating the sacred guest-host relationship protected by Zeus. One day, as the sun reached its zenith, Sisyphus saw Zeus, the king of the gods, transformed into a majestic eagle, his feathers shimmering with divine light. In his talons, he clutched the form of a beautiful maiden, Aegina, daughter of the river god Sisyphus. Sisyphus watched with keen interest as Zeus spirited her away to the distant island of Oenone. The disappearance of Aegina did not go unnoticed. Soon, the distraught Sisyphus came to Ephyra. He approached Sisyphus's throne. "King Sisyphus," Sisyphus pleaded, his voice like the rushing of a mountain stream, "my beloved daughter Aegina has vanished. I fear she has been taken by the gods. Can you help me find her?" Sisyphus felt his heart race with excitement. Here was an opportunity to gain favor with a god, to elevate his status even further. His mind whirled with possibilities, calculating the potential benefits and risks. With a benevolent smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he replied, "Great Sisyphus, I may indeed have knowledge of your daughter's whereabouts, but such information comes at a price. Grant my city an eternal spring, and I shall reveal all I know." Desperation etched on his watery features. Sisyphus nodded. "Anything for my Aegina. You shall have your spring, a gift from the rivers themselves. Now, I beg you, where is she?" Leaning close, his breath hot against Sisyphus's ear, Sisyphus whispered, "Zeus has taken her to the island of Oenone. He flies there in the form of an eagle." As Sisyphus rushed away, Sisyphus felt a chill run down his spine. He had betrayed the king of the gods himself. For a moment, fear gripped his heart, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of pride. He, a mere mortal, had outwitted Zeus, but the thunderbolt of divine retribution was swift. Zeus, his rage as terrible as a storm-tossed sea, dispatched Thanatos, the personification of death itself. The dark figure materialized in Sisyphus's chamber, his presence an icy void that seemed to drain the very life from the air. The air grew cold as Thanatos, the god of death, appeared in Sisyphus's chamber. His dark form seemed to drain the very life from the room. In his hands, he held a set of gleaming chains that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly power. Sisyphus felt fear grip his heart, but his quick mind was already forming a plan. He forced a smile and approached Thanatos with open arms. "Ah, mighty Thanatos," Sisyphus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "What an honor to be visited by one so powerful. I've heard tales of your strength and the magic of your chains." Thanatos, unused to such a warm welcome, paused. "You know of me?" Sisyphus nodded eagerly. "Who doesn't know of the great Thanatos? Your chains are legendary. They say they can bind any soul no matter how strong. Is it true they were forged by Hephaestus himself?" Thanatos stood a little straighter, pride evident in his stance. "Indeed, they were. No mortal or god can escape once bound." Seizing the moment, Sisyphus's eyes widened with feigned awe. "Incredible! You know, I've always been fascinated by divine craftsmanship. As a king, I've collected many fine things, but I've never seen anything like those chains. The way they gleam, it's as if they're alive with power." Thanatos looked down at the chains, a hint of fondness in his normally emotionless face. Sisyphus pressed on, his voice filled with wonder. I can only imagine the skill it takes to use them. I bet they respond to your touch in ways no mortal could understand. The way you must be able to manipulate them, it must be like an art form. Now Thanatos was clearly pleased, unused to having his skills appreciated. It does take great skill, he admitted. Sisyphus leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, before I go with you, I have one last wish. I've always wanted to see true divine power up close. Would you do me the honor of demonstrating how those marvelous chains work? To witness their power firsthand, well, that would make even death seem like a worthy price. Thanatos hesitated, but the flattery had done its work. Very well, mortal, watch closely, for few ever see this and live to tell of it. As Thanatos began to wrap the chains around himself to demonstrate, Sisyphus's eyes glittered with triumph. Oh, but great Thanatos, he said smoothly. Surely, for the demonstration to be complete, the chains must be fully closed. Allow me to assist you with the final locks. And with that, Sisyphus sprang into action, securing the chains around Death himself. As realization dawned in Thanatos' eyes, Sisyphus allowed himself a small, victorious smile. Thank you for the demonstration, mighty Thanatos, Sisyphus said, backing away from the now bound god. It was indeed enlightening. And so, with Death himself bound by his own chains, Sisyphus had outwitted the gods, and he was proud of it, but his triumph would prove to be short-lived. With Death imprisoned, chaos reigned in the mortal world. The old grew older still, their bodies frail and withered, yet Death never came to offer release from their suffering. The sick wasted away, their ailments festering and intensifying with each passing day, as the sweet embrace of oblivion remained forever out of reach. On the battlefields, warriors struck each other down, only to rise again, their wounds miraculously healed, but their spirits broken by the endless cycle of violence. Ares, the god of war, raged as his domain lost all meaning, his thirst for glorious battles quenched by a grotesque parody of eternal conflict. It was Ares himself, his armor stained with the blood of 1,000 futile battles, who finally freed Thanatos. With a snarl of fury, he dragged Sisyphus to the underworld, casting him into the murky depths of Tartarus. Yet even as he faced eternity in the realm of shades, Sisyphus's cunning mind hatched one final scheme. Before his spirit departed, he whispered to his wife, Merope, my love, do not bury my body with the proper rites. Cast it unburied into the public square. This shall be the ultimate proof of your devotion. And so, when Sisyphus's shade reached the shores of the Styx, where Charon waited with his ferry, he approached Persephone, queen of the underworld. Her beauty was terrible to behold, both radiant and shadowed, like a flower blooming in the depths of Tartarus. Great Persephone, Sisyphus began, his voice dripping with feigned sorrow. I come before you not as a king, but as a wronged husband. My wife, in her grief, has neglected to give me proper burial. I beg you, allow me to return to the world above, if only for a day, to ensure my rites are performed. Then I shall return, ready to accept my place among the dead. Persephone, moved by his plight, for she too knew the pain of separation, granted his request. But as Sisyphus emerged once more into the light of day, feeling the warm sun on his face and the sweet air in his lungs, he laughed. Once again he had tricked the gods. For years Sisyphus lived on, savoring every moment of his stolen life. But the patience of the gods, though great, is not infinite. It was Hermes, swift as thought, who finally came for Sisyphus. The divine messenger's winged sandals barely touched the ground as he seized the defiant mortal, dragging him back to the underworld where Hades himself waited. The Lord of the Dead, his face as impassive as stone, pronounced Sisyphus's punishment. For your deceit, for your arrogance in thinking you could outwit the gods themselves, you are condemned to an eternity of futile labor. You shall roll a massive boulder up a steep hill, but each time you near the summit, it shall roll back down, and you will begin again. Never shall you know the peace of completion, the satisfaction of a task fulfilled. This is the price of your cleverness, Sisyphus. And so began Sisyphus's eternal torment. Day after day, year after year, century after century, he pushes his boulder up the hill. His muscles strain, sweat pours down his brow, and his breath comes in ragged gasps. Each time he nears the top, hope rises in his chest. Perhaps this one time, he will succeed. But always, just before the summit, the boulder slips from his grasp, thundering back down to the base of the hill. In that moment, as Sisyphus watches his work undone in an instant, he knows true despair. He understands in the depths of his being the futility of his existence. And yet, he descends. He places his shoulders once more against the boulder. He begins again,